After a Supreme Court decision today that, according to Justice Elena Kagan's dissent, leaves the Voting Rights Act, quote, all but a dead letter, New York Governor Kathy Hochul said, the Supreme Court has been chipping away at our elections for years. It is clearly carrying out Donald Trump's will with this decision. New York has always led the fight for voting rights and will lead again. I'm working with the legislature to change New York's redistricting process so we can fight back against Washington's attempts to rig our democracy. Joining us now is former United States Attorney General Eric Holder. He is now the chairman of the National Democratic Redistricting Committee. General Holder, thank you very much for joining us tonight. What was your reading of this decision today?
Well, it's the culmination of an attempt by the Roberts Court to really destroy the Voting Rights Act of 1965, which is the crown jewel of the civil rights movement. People tend to forget that the unifying thing of the movement was to obtain the right to vote. And if you look at what happened during the civil rights movement and the results of that movement, you saw a dramatic increase in the number of black elected officials at the federal, state, and local level. And that, for whatever reason, is something that has disturbed conservatives, Republicans, since the passage of the act in 1965. John Roberts, as a young man in the United States Department of Justice, indicated a lack of desire to see the act continue. And now, as Chief Justice of the United States, he, I think, has finally accomplished his goal.
So we saw an immediate reaction from the governor of New York. Redistricting in New York actually takes 2 years, but she's going to try to do something so that at least would be a factor in the next presidential election.
Yeah, and I think we have to look at all the ways in which we can combat that which the Supreme Court has done, which Republicans are continuing to try to do. We've seen what they're going to try to do in Florida by gerrymandering there, even though the map in Florida is already gerrymandered. They want to put a gerrymander on top of one. Republicans are basically afraid. They don't think that they can go to the voters with the policies that they have put in place, with the candidates that they have. They know that the big, beautiful bill is wildly unpopular. They know that this war is wildly unpopular. Measles are up. The price of gas is up. There's nothing that they can go to the voters with. And so what they're trying to do is rig the election, cheat, so that they can ensure that they hold on to power that they illegitimately got as a result of the gerrymandering that they did a decade ago, hold on to that power in spite of what the will of the people might be. And so we, as Democrats, progressives, and people who care about our nation's democracy, have to fight back in every way that we can, doing what Governor Hochul is going to do, doing what we have been doing at the National Democratic Redistricting Committee to try to bring fairness to the redistricting process. I mean, you know, what they're trying to do is entrench power. And you do that by making it more difficult to vote, by drawing unfair lines. And that is the way in which they think that they will hold on to the power that they have.
Was this decision today a surprise to you?
No, I can't say that it was. The court indicated, you could see during the oral arguments, that they were going to do something negative to the Voting Rights Act, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. The question was how bad. But it is still something that is hard to take, especially when one looks at precedent. This is the same court that 2-3 years ago, in a case that my organization was a part of, ruled that in Alabama, Section 2 was a viable part of our law, applied Section 2 and told Alabama that they had to redraw their lines so that African Americans in Alabama would, for the first time in the history of the state, have the ability to elect 2 black congressmen, have just that ability. And what we saw as a result of that ruling was increased participation, increased numbers of people going to the polls. And it shows not only who gets elected, but who participates, when people thought that their vote would in fact matter. And so, yeah, you know, same court, same basic set of facts, different decision. This is not a court that is constrained by precedent or by principle. They focus only on personnel. They have the votes, and they're going to do that which they wanted to do for decades.
And so is a kind of counter-offensive of redistricting the only option here for Democrats to consider?
Well, I think that's what we have to consider in the short term so that we can save our democracy and then ultimately heal it. And I think the way we ultimately heal it is for Democrats to take control of Congress, to have a Democratic president, and then to pass federal legislation that bans partisan gerrymandering, that bans racial gerrymandering, that requires that redistricting be done in a fair way, that advances fair electoral processes. It was something that came out of the House of Representatives during the Biden administration, where we got it through the House, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, that did a whole bunch of good things, but couldn't get it past the Senate, couldn't get past the Senate filibuster. If that is what is necessary in a new Democratic administration with a new Democratic Congress, then I think that we have to consider that which is what's more important, the archaic filibuster or the protection of our democracy. So in the short term, yes, we have got to do that which we can to save our democracy. But ultimately, we have to, I think, pass federal legislation.